Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting chapter of Adventures in the Ink. I'm your host Scott, and today we are crashing through the jungles of what is an errata, and why does that affect the games of TCG. Joining me as always are my junior chipmunks in Matt and Mike.
Heyo.
And Mike, I know you didn't catch that reference, but Matt, did you?
It's a very subtle nod to what I'm talking about that most people probably
Very
already
subtle.
know.
Hey, to be
Yes.
fair, I've been adjacent to enough people who talk about Emperor's New Groove. Still stumbling a little bit, but I know about the Junior Bucky or the what is it?
Junior chipmunks.
Junior Chipmunks. Yes.
All right. So we are here to talk about the news that came out from Lorcana this week about we have our first major errata card now in the set. It goes live when the new set Shimmering Skies comes out on August 9th. Of course, we are talking about Bucky, Squirrel Squeak Tutor. So before we dive into the Bucky card himself, let's dive into what exactly is an errata and what does it do to TCG. I'll start with you. You want to explain what errata means to those that don't play TCGs?
Sorry, Scott. I missed you a little bit. Were you asking me or Matt?
Yes, you.
Okay. Yeah. So an errata is basically a correction to a card that can either mean that the developer of the game thinks that a card has been misinterpreted, so maybe to make it more clear, or it's being I don't say misunderstood, but they want it to play in a different way. And oftentimes, in other TCGs that I've played, the errata is not very wide sweeping, but maybe clarification or but it does physically change the card, even though when you see the card, obviously they can't go up and collect all of the Buckies or other cards that people have had and change the words on it. And yeah, it's kind of drastic because you want someone who has something to be able to just play with their game pieces or their cards in this case and be able to understand what they're supposed to do and not have to reference some rule book or some online or other source.
Matt, for erratas, in other TCGs, are erratas something that are major done, or are they mostly like just slight tweaks to cards?
The mostly strike treat. Sometimes it makes them cheaper. Sometimes they'll change the wording of the ability to either tone it down or to increase it, but like just to make the card a little bit more playable in a 15 meta. Or if they realize that like they wanted the card to work this way and they realized they didn't have it working the right way. Sometimes it's just because there's a typo.
I have seen that in some TCGs as well. How usually does errata affect TCGs? Is it a lot of issues, or do players just accept errata for whatever it is and just move on?
So it hurt the newer players or the players who are more casual the most. Because they see the card, they're like, oh, they called it cool. And then when they go to play it in an event or throw someone up like, oh, that's not actually what the card did. They allotted it. With that, it happened a lot in Magic because, that game's like 20 years old and they changed a bunch of cards over the years. So this is something that, like, it just hurts new people who aren't in the loop or who may not have been playing when this happened.
Yeah, it's a very I don't know, kind of fourth wall breaking change to a game because you want people to be able to sit down and just be immersed in your game and not to be like, hold on, let me reference, even if it's a printed rule book. Like that's kind of annoying in games, but now in this where it's like, I They're gonna have to look online and say, does my opponent play any of these cards that have been changed?
Yeah, you kind of just have to like memorize, especially since like with trading card games, like the card itself is normally law. Like you go by what the cards say, not what the rules say. Most of the time.
Yeah, in trading card games, there's the base set of rules, and the cards all break the rules.
Yeah.
Right, or they allow you to do something extra. Whereas now it's like, but in some cases, no, it changes again.
Are cards that get errata, are they most frequently just said, well, there's an errata online, you go by that, or do they usually come out with reprints that show the new rules on that card?
So
Typically in TCGs.
no, most of the time they'll do a reprint, or if they print newer versions of the card, they'll reprint it with the correct typing. Sometimes there are a lot of stuff that they have not reprint or that don't plan to reprint for a hot minute.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that from now on, whenever the card is now printed, it's going to have the new version of it.
Yeah, which is interesting because it makes you ask the question: Are I guess two questions. Are they going to reprint, like have another print run of Rise of the Floodborn? And two, if they're not, are they going to have a best of, or maybe just like a grab bag? You know, maybe they'll call it glimmers from the past, and it's just an assortment of random cards, all from previous sets up until that point.
That
I don't
would
know.
that would be good. So the two kings with what you think, man. The first king is they've always said multiple times, and it's so that they are willing to reprint that along as there's a demand for them. And so far, we're seeing a lot of times during the set championships, they all doing reprints or restock for souls of these older sets to give them a chance, for new players to have access to the older cards. The biggest king, and what you were saying before, it would be a good king for them to do a Grimmett from the past that so they can keep the staples in the meta from the older sets that people really want to get, but like take out some of the other like all the vanilla code that people don't really want because they don't really need.
That'd be interesting because then, yeah, you don't need functionally. Some of the cards are exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's the same cost one. It's a 2/2 quest for one.
Yeah, like and like a lot of that stuff is like for draft aspects and stuff. So like you don't necessarily need to reprint all those characters.
Mm-hmm.
But like the legendaries and the stuff, like a whole new world, be prepared. Those like really key cards that you see a lot of play. To the them reprinting them in another set to make them easier for newer players to get their hands on is a good idea.
So before we dive into the card specifically that we're here to talk about, we got one last thing to talk about, and that is banning cards. The reason we're bringing up banning is one of the arguments right now going online with this card is, did they errata it because it needed to be errata, or should they have just banned it? Matt, what exactly is banning cards in TCGs?
Basically, it means the card is unplayable in the format it banned in. But right now, since Lorcana only have one official format, it will be banned in. Well, I get the draft and stuff. So in sealed, it's still playable, but in constructed, you cannot bring it.
Mm-hmm.
So when we take a look at errata and we take a look at banning, in your guys' opinion, not talking about the card specifically, just in general, what's better? Errating cards or banning cards?
I would say from a game designer perspective, banning is usually better, because typically if you're banning something, you're removing it completely and it opens up a new, like in a competitive environment, a new meta, and it's very clear, like you could just be told, I don't play this card. But now, until the reprints of errata cards happen, you're gonna have to like have people just from memory know exactly what a card does, which is hard when you're in a competitive, stressful environment, etc. So I would always lean towards banning, um, but I don't know. I think that's more from a just design. It's clean. You just say, "Yep, we just don't play it."
Now, I don't like banning cards in general. I can get bad. I think at a game design standpoint, you want to have that be your last opt-in, and you want to design your game in a way that you don't need to ban. Um, I so I think in small doses, a ladder would be okay, and I think if they, what we'll talk about in a moment, they changed about Bucky. I think it would have. I don't think they needed to go that far. I think they just needed to change one thing, and we'll go over that in a second. Um, and I think that would have solved the issue with Bucky.
Hmm.
The fact that they did this much to him, I think they should have banned him, and I think they should have just in the next set released a new Bucky that would this version. Um,
Well, I will use that as our segue into talking about Bucky. So we have the Bucky card. As was mentioned earlier, he is from Rise of the Floodborn. And you guys will notice that I am pretty much treating this card as if he is our card of the week, because this entire podcast is pretty much going to be talking about a card of the week. I know we talked about Bucky before, but I'm going to go over that card again with you guys. He is I guess I should say he was a 2-drop inkable card. 1 strength, 1 willpower. He was a Storyborn ally. He had the ability of Ward, and he also had the unique ability of Squeak. Whenever you play a Floodborn character, each opponent chooses and discards a card, and he quested for 1 lore. As of August 9th, when Shimmering Skies come out, Bucky now becomes a 3-drop. His strength and willpower stays the same at 1 each. He loses Ward, and his Squeak ability now says, whenever you play a Bloodborne character, if you used Shift to play them, each opponent chooses and discards a card. So, as Matt was saying, that is 3 changes to Bucky. His ink has gone up. He's lost the Ward ability, and there's a slight tweak to his special ability. So, Matt, since you were vocal first about all 3 changes, I'm going to start with you. And what do you like about these changes? What do you not like about these changes?
so I think the best thing about it is changing it to when you tipped a Floodborn. I think that definitely make Bucky a lot more balanced. It definitely completely changed the deck build that people was running with him, because like before you're basically running as many Floodborns as possible in the deck with Bucky, but I think only 3 of them most people would actually running the tip target for them. Diablo, Pegasus, and Robin Hood. All the other Floodborns, like the Aladdin, the Thad Beat, the Fords, people were constantly running with Bucky. They would not run in tip target for them. So this would greatly reduce the power of the Discord. And I think this is probably the best change. The ward, not a bad change. I think that it makes it a lot easier to target, a lot easier to kill. So
We don't say kill, we say banish.
yeah,
Hmm.
ban it. A lot easier to ban it with direct.
Eradicate.
Yeah, a lot easier to get rid of. Hit precaught, completely unnecessary in my opinion. The bakery that make adding that is the nail in the coffin. That is just making him almost unplayable at this point. And I can see some people still running with him or seeing a change in how the deck can build because, but I don't. I think making him a precaught is just too far.
Mm.
I think
Mike's.
I,
Go ahead, Matt.
I disagree with Matt on that point, but Matt, you can finish.
Oh, my backing is I think they should have that only have done one of the changes would I think would have solved the issue. Two of the things that to be safe, but doing all three is overkill.
Mhm.
Mike, same questions. What do you like? What do you hate?
Yeah. So when you asked me originally what is an errata, like that first part that Matt said, just changing the wording, that's what I'm used to, where it's like it's just shifting it by a little bit. The other two, by like strictly just changing the cost, I think is very rare in games because that's like, imagine you're playing against someone for the first time and they're like, actually, no, you can't play that. It costs one more.
So
They're going to look at you and be like, that says two on the card. I think it's from a designer's perspective, it makes more sense to just change the words. But go ahead, Matt.
oh, I've seen that. I'm in Magic. They've done it both ways. I've seen cards get cheaper and cards get higher.
Yeah.
And and a lot of times the whichever version the cheapest is the one that tells for more because people want to kind of like flip that in. Or like
Try
some
to.
people in a casual setting will do add card written.
Yeah. I think it's. I don't know. To me, I think the words are more. It's whatever. It just seems a little less disruptive to change versus the cost. The cost seems like or keywords, like I'm changing the card drastically. Like at this point, if you're changing it from 2 to 3, you might as well change it to 4 and then change the stats and that like make it a 3/3. I don't know. Like there's lots of reasons, or at least in my opinion, why that numbers just seem a little like more like concrete, and words are a little bit more fluid, easier to kind of like gloss over. Yeah, it changed a little bit. I think also the 3 cost, I would argue, was the not the most necessary, but I would say if you're gonna, you know, removing ward, increasing the cost to 3, and changing it so you have to shift to trigger the ability, I would say that it's the second most important thing, only because it allows slightly more interactability from your opponent. Because the way that currently it plays, and I think the other reason why they probably did this is that if you get him out on turn 2, you could potentially play 2 different Floodborns on turn 3 if you have the alternative cost Floodborns. And at that point, if the person's been inking every turn and playing a card every turn, they're out of cards, right? Or they're very close. So it to me, it's just, or I guess maybe you need Diablo to sing something. The increased cost of 3 just allows a little bit more things to get a hold of it. To deal 1 damage, to do whatever. You're only a 1 turn away from, or 2 turns away, depending if you're ramping. 1 turn away to grab your swords, or shifting into it, grab your swords. Yeah, I think making him uninkable would have been better too, just to put an extra pressure. I like that better than changing the cost and getting rid of ward. But I don't know. At this point, because they changed so much, I think I agree with Matt's original statement that it just seems like they should have just banned him and like made an inside joke like Bucky 2.0 or something.
Yeah,
Like a less annoying squirrel.
Well, with that being said, the official thing that came out from Ravensburger, and now I will read it as it's printed, is Ursula's return gave Bucky players the opportunity to discard multiple cards from opponents' hands as early as turn 2 while building up a board that was very difficult to interact with, creating a stressful environment that just wasn't fun. Ward also made Bucky close to untouchable, taking away player agency to deal with a powerful and cheap threat. For these reasons, we're increasing Bucky's cost to 3 and removing Ward from him. Additionally, we feel that requiring Shift better represents the Floodborne experience, as many decks utilizing Bucky have mostly ignored using the Shift mechanic outside of one Sinister Bird. And then they did a follow-up that said, additionally, our approach to Errata, rather than ban in this instance, was a unique case. We are planning support for printings of additional languages in the future and want to deliver a fully playable experience to our future fans, rather than having those players have one less card in Emerald. Banning is still a tool in our toolbox that we will deploy if necessary in the future, and one we would typically prefer over a drastic errata like this. So with now seeing Ravensburger's official response, does that change how you guys feel about the card, or do you still think it should have just be banned?
I see where they're coming from, and it makes sense because it feels bad when you open a pack and you pull a dead card. Like, oh, the card not playable. So like instead of like this pack I got 12 cards, this pack it's more like I'm only getting 11.
Mhm.
And also it makes sense because they did announce today. I don't know if you guys saw it, but Lorcana is coming to China now.
Hey.
So the Rise of the Bloodborne Chinese boxes are gonna have the errata version.
Okay.
So that kind of makes sense, and I see from a business perspective them wanting to go with more of a errata.
Hmm. Yeah, I find it interesting that they did say in that second part that they would prefer to ban over errata. Uh, but I can also see you don't want someone's first experience into the, like, hey, we're releasing sets 1, 2, and 3, but one of those cards that you're opening, you're not going to be able to use.
But also, like, they could just put a different card in. Oh, Yu-Gi-Oh does it. Yu-Gi-Oh like have a pure Japan. I forget the different term for the two formats, but Yu-Gi-Oh have a pure Japanese only format, and then they have the other languages format.
Hmm.
And like sometimes like cards will transition at different points back and forth, but like they're called that unique to the English version, and then they're called unique to the Japanese version, and sometimes they'll go over and like this whole build that are unique to the different format.
Mm.
So it's not unheard of, but it does. If they want a global community, though, I can get made. Especially since they've already like setting up a world competition, so they want to make everyone able to play together.
Yeah. Uh, I I don't think it changes my opinion. I like while I understand their reasoning, I still think you know a ban seems like a clean, just like we'll deal with it like whatever. But to me, it also signals that they don't want to completely get rid of the discard cards from people's hands kind of mechanic that's our identity that is Emerald.
Oh yeah, the Emblem is a way too invested in the Discord, but Discord is a classic game mechanic. Most TCDs have a Discord format.
And
Oh
most, well, I don't know about
yeah,
most TCGs, but I know in Magic that there was also one of the, first most hated cards.
yeah.
What was it? It was a black card for 2. Opponent discards 2 cards at random from their hand. Oh man, I'm failing. Anyway, that card was like so obnoxious, especially because you could turn one. Well, it's not as essential, but yeah, just telling someone, "Hey, we're gonna play a top deck game. Hope you're lucky." Which I don't know. The games I played against you, Matt. That's when we got to top deck mode. That's what it was like. Oh, neither of us have any cards in our hand. What are we gonna do? So I have a question for you guys. I want to hear your opinion on this. Uh, do you think that, I guess, what do you think the threshold is for a card needing to be banned or errata, let's say, like this, like just severely changed?
So in tournament setting, the deck need to have a well above 50% win rate. They need to it basically need to be in my opinion, you play it, you basically automatically win. If you at the point where you see your opponent play that card, you goof and you try and hope next game you can beat them before they play it.
So a card that just strictly gives you so much advantage that it's hard to recover from.
Yeah,
would be yours, and also just competitive performance in big tournaments.
yeah.
Mine's along the same lines as that. I would say, and it's probably going to be saying what Matt just said, but different, worded differently. Mine would be of any card that when it's played, if it's to the point where there is almost no strategy available to beat it, especially if it's an early game card, then I would say that's something that would need to be either errata or banned. And with you guys, I lean more towards the banning of cards as well over errata cards. I think errata cards should only be if they are needing to clarify something, or misspellings. I don't think errata should have been used the way it was used on Bucky. So I think cards that are just so OP that, like Matt was saying, you see that card, you immediately just want to bounce from the game. I think those are the cards that need to be banned.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing is too that we don't know what fully the next set is going to bring, or the set after that. But the people playtesting and designing this game do know. The one thing I talked about in previous episode when we talked about Bucky is that the card they can add that could have played around Bucky and weakened Bucky on a whole. So there's a good chance with them seeing more of what's coming down the line, they probably were like, "Oh, because we have to start printing so many months in advance, we don't actually have a way to quickly deal with Bucky. Bucky's winning a lot of tournaments. There's a lot of fan outcry. Which I think some of the reason too they went so hard on Bucky is there was a ton of outcry on Bucky.
Mm-hmm.
But also though, we started to see people kind of learn how to play around him, because I'm seeing a lot of events or what places were able to do tech championships last weekend. A lot of Amethyst Rubies was winning.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's because Bucky wasn't good enough? Because I've heard, and I'm not familiar enough with the matchup, but that the Ruby Amethyst versus Bucky Emerald Steel is not as is very not favored in the Ruby Amethyst. It's so Emerald Steel has a significant advantage in that, while Ruby Amethyst is good against the other two major decks in the meta.
And that kind of you kind of need to be a rock paper scissors, but it's good enough that it can still be it. It
Yeah,
may not be consistently. Bakery, any deck in a card game, you basically want deck to have add quotes to a 50% win rate without going too far over in a game design 10 point.
yeah. I mean, you want your player to feel powerful and to feel smart for picking a good deck. And
Yeah,
so you want some asymmetry, which is kind of the rock, paper, scissors, but you don't want it to be so much that it feels like luck. You want the player to have influence enough to say, oh, I took a 55% or 55-45 where I was on the disadvantage and change it to like a 52-48. Yeah. So the reason I asked you the question of what you think the threshold is because I've heard game designers talk about this before for banning, and the thought I was always, or until I heard this comment, I was always of the mindset that you want to only ban if it, there was some hard data, like it was winning all of the tournaments, or like you said, it was just strictly overpowering everyone else.
Yeah.
And the argument I heard was you should ban a card additionally if players feel that it is too oppressive, which I've seen outcries on Reddit and other social media platforms that are saying, oh, the crybabies got what they want because they complain about Bucky and now Bucky's being removed. But from the health of the game perspective, if you have people leaving the game or not playing the game for months at a time because a card is oppressive or makes a game no fun, or is, like you said, they're designing it sets into the future and they're like, look, this card's going to be a problem for the next 3 sets. They're like, we should do this now.
Yeah.
Rather than wait and wait and wait until all of the data comes in and say like, oh, look, see, I told you, it's instead of a 60-40 win rate, it's a 57-43, and then half your player base has left the game.
Yeah, and it sometimes the data doesn't match people's opinion too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that is a good thing to factor in, because like you do want people to enjoy the game, and if all you see is people just complaining about the card, you do need to take that into consideration.
Mm-hmm. The deck brewer, like find solutions, problem solver in me is like, I feel bad that that's the truth of the matter. Like it makes the most sense maybe for the game to kind of nip it in the bud first. Because part of me is like, oh, just give people time to brew around it and play around and discover how to really adjust to it. But I also understand the necessity to change things before it gets out of hand.
Well, now that you bring this up, Mike, because that segues into my next question for you guys quite nicely, is now that a major errata has been introduced into Lorcana, how do you feel that's going to change Lorcana going forward?
So the biggest thing about that is them saying that when they do allow it and when they do ban, they are going to come into effect at the hobby to start of the next set. So what this mean is we know when the changes are going to happen. So we know that if we see a problem in a set, we know that it's not going to get dealt with until the end of the set.
Good thing, bad thing?
It's a little bit of both. It's a good thing for us to know, so people can keep track on it. We can see if there's anything they feel like what the developers are doing to keep the meta, what them doing to focus on top. The bad thing is if they trip up and they make a card too powerful, which Magic have done constantly, then we have to wait 3 months for it to leave the meta.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that they're at the point where they have product, but they're destroying it to reprint new product before sending it out to distributors?
That would be the dumbest thing to do. No, send out the old Bucky. Let them in the market. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean it's only one card. If it was like a major
Yeah.
misprint or like there's some curse word or something on one of the cards.
But also the benefit of the Errata over the van is like you can still play the old version. You just have to memorize old. Nowadays people sometimes with the print and tape over it.
Yeah.
But the old Buckies are still physically playable. These are you gotta remember the different effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to. So Scott, to get back to your question, sorry, I kind of pulled this off on a tangent. The effect
That's
of the
nothing
game.
new.
Yeah. The effect on the game going forward. Although I don't agree with the errata over a ban over just letting it sit. Um, like I think if I were to order it, I would say let it sit for a little bit longer and then ban. and then Errata. Like that would be my preference. I think it's good to know that the developers and designers of the game aren't afraid to use this tool, and that they were able to craft a thoughtful response to give you a peek behind the curtain of what they were thinking about. Because ultimately, if they were just to say, "Hey, we're errataing this, have fun," or "We're banning this, whatever," I think that will leave people more outraged. So I think it's a good sign as far as the communication goes. It's a good sign that the developers are paying attention and wanting to like think about the future of the game rather than just the current state too, because they did reference that, I believe, in one of their posts. Yeah, I don't know. I'm slightly cautious that the first thing was just like a hard errata. Like I said, is both cost and ability and other ability, and not
I'm
just a slight nudge in one direction.
it's gonna be very interesting to see the top 64 patented and color combination at Toronto versus Chicago, which both are gonna be the same set. So it's gonna be really interesting to see.
Well,
Um,
and Dallas Fort Worth too,
yet.
because that's the next one. Yeah, I think it's going to be
Well,
I think it'll be very obvious from Chicago to Bochum to Dallas Fort Worth to Toronto. I wonder if you're going to see a gradual phase, or people are just going to say, let's play Bucky until he's dead. Sorry, till he's errated into oblivion, and then we'll do a quick switch. Or if people are going to slowly just be like, let's just pull it out, now, or start playing different decks because we want to get the repetitions and understand the meta, what the meta is going to be like before we have to just do a hard switch. What are you looking up, Matt?
I'm trying to figure out when it detected one, or when was that one?
It is coming up, I believe, next week or 2 weeks from now. So
Okay.
it's within this month.
Yeah, the Bucky is still going to be legal for that one.
Yeah.
With that, I think that's going to be the biggest issue. If Bucky, if a lot of green tail Bucky decks are not in the top 64 or the top 16, then that means the meta people have to around Bucky, and Bucky not as big of a problem as he once was.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's still a problem, and like the majority of the decks are still at the same or higher potential than Chicago was, then Bucky is still a problem, and they definitely need to step in.
Yeah. I think they did say something that they're not just paying attention to competitive. Like, I think they're probably getting user feedback also from people who are just attending your local game stores and are like, listen, this is not fun.
Yeah.
So that brings me to my next question. That's basically, now that Pandora's box has been opened and that Errata is now on the table, that Lorcana is using that tool, how often do you think they're going to be willing to start Errata or even banning cards now in the future? Or is this Bucky a very isolated case right now?
I hope that we don't get these in every set. And if we do get them, I would like them to only be like one or two cards that actually get affected.
I would say if they're errataing one or two cards a set, like they need to do more playtesting.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Hopefully we don't see it every set, and when we do see it, it's only like one or two cards.
Yeah, I think one or two cards a year is fine. I think if you're doing one or two cards a set, which is what, like somewhere between 8 and or like 5 to 10 total cards a year, it makes the player base feel very unstable. Especially, I mean, I think we're lucky in this instance that Bucky is an uncommon, so it's not people who have dished out hundreds of dollars to get a playset for this card. Whereas if they errata a card that's a legendary, that's like a $40, $50, $60 card, people are going to be real mad.
Yeah, and also like the most effective cards in the Bucky deck or like in basically any deck in those colors anyway, so they're a useful card to have.
Unless you're me and you've still only pulled one Diablo and like 9 Tritons.
I only pulled one Diablo.
Uh,
I only pulled one Diablo.
Oh
with our
man, you
powers
get
combined, we could set one of us to a set championship.
But I'm with you. I did pull a ton of Tritons too, so
Yeah. Seems slightly unrandom.
I mean that's how I was last that. I ended up pulling so many of that one of the Timbuds. No, was it Mapata?
Yeah. I think for me it was I got the better end of the variance on the Rise of the Floodborn. I think I pulled 7 Sad Beasts, so sorry,
I have
Scott.
still yet to pull one.
Yeah. That's
Sad Beast makes me sad.
yeah. I mean it is
Oh.
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, like the Ultra returned, I got. Oh no, the Ultra the Tiber of all. I got super lucky. I pulled a full playset of those.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that was the only legend. That was one of the. Yeah, that was like the only legendary I pulled a full playset of. The rare Mapata Champion of Pride Rand. I pulled like 8 of these things. I have a foil playset of the card I pulled.
Wow. Wait, like so the Mufasa, the Amber one?
No,
Or
the tail one, the unplayable one.
Oh,
But yeah, sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't.
yeah.
But also interesting though, we can also tease it used in another way, and like it can be used a buff card too. So I thought someone on Facebook saying they should like allow a Gontu to actually make him playable.
Gone too. So I definitely for the first chapter when it was scarce, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna bite the bullet. I'm gonna buy a playset of Gantu in case I can never get a hold of a playset, just because it's such a polarizing, mostly terrible card. I was like, maybe in some future there's gonna be a chance that this card's broken. But,
Yeah.
I was like, or I'm out $8.
Yeah, I think it. Yeah, so potentially we could see them like laddering other cards to make them a little bit better. Like maybe we'll see some of these other cards that whenever you shipped, maybe they'll go back and change their mind. Like, no, that's whenever you play a Floodborn.
Mm-hmm. So that's the other part. Sorry, to go back to our Bucky discussion. This I think it's confusing because then all of the other cards are not errata to say whenever you shift a Floodborn card.
Yeah.
They're still whenever you play a Floodborn card. And I don't think any of the other cards are nearly as good. Maybe, what is it, Blue Fairy could potentially be, but she doesn't have Ward. So,
You have Evasion though.
yeah, evasion, but like there's enough targetable things. You have bounce, you
Yeah.
have damage, you have character removal. That's 3 different colors. You can, I mean, technically Sapphire's got targeted removal too. I think the only color that can't really deal with it would be Amber, which just generally doesn't have good removal at all. So anyway, yeah, I think Ward is just a very limiting, like, if you put some Ward on something, you have to know that its other effects aren't so game changing and breaking, or they need to start giving some sort of, you know, more of the edict effects where it's, the opponent has to choose one of their own things.
Yeah.
Since you brought up Gantu, well, I'm gonna ask you guys this question. Look over all 4 sets of cards that we have right now. What cards would you want to have errata, and why?
So I want Mickey Mouse Trumpeter to actually have more willpower or like some form of protection. What makes this legendary card actually be good? Like they got 2 kills of their card. Like don't be cowards with Mickey Mouse Trumpeter. Make him good.
I think if he had evasive, that would, I don't know. Would that be too much and too annoying? I don't
No,
think so because he
basically,
costs 4, and there's enough.
and he's not inkable.
Yeah, I
So
think if
yeah,
you
give
gave
it.
him evasive, he would potentially see play
Yeah,
because his ability is also, you think it's great, but ultimately you're you you need to play with a bunch of high cost cards to make him really effective. So you're already kind of like skewing your deck into a bad position if you don't draw him. So yeah, I agree.
I
He would be
was like,
one.
I had
Um,
him in my deck for what, a week? I think I played him in my deck with you guys,
mhm.
and then I was like, nope, he's gone.
I
Although
had one draft with him though.
yes, I was gonna say yeah, you did well in the draft. I think we went. You made it to the finals, and we played each other, and you got a Chernobog out with it. And I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!" I was like, "You
I
got
got
one Chernobog and one those."
I got a Chernobog out with him. I had another game where I got that Mafata I was talking about earlier out with him. I think I might have also gotten that Night Goopy out with him.
Yeah,
Like I had a bunch of high cost cards he was just getting out for me.
yep.
Another one I could see potentially getting a ladder because a future set break them is Beat Reventress. I can see them laddering him so he can only collect once per turn.
Uh,
Um,
I'm
I
still against that. I
I, I
think
am I am also against it, but this would be my get
I'm
that
not,
potential
because
future
I hate
ladder.
playing against that card.
Oh, I love that, and I'm waiting. I can't. I'm hoping for him to get good again at some point because I really enjoyed playing with him. But
mhm.
and I really want to. Right now, Emblem is starting to get a lot more on the dealing with damage character stuff. So I'm very curious. So I kind of want to see if like that eventually help make beat be a lot better.
Yeah. So my opinion on errata-ing high cost cards to be worse, I say it's a lot less likely to happen because the reason why Bucky was so pernicious, I don't know, kind of like menacing, is because he was an early card. It just limits the amount of cards that you can actually have to deal with it on curve. Whereas with Beast Relentless, you know, not just playing certain cards, you can do entire strategies that someone who's playing a Beast Relentless deck wouldn't be able to handle. Like so a hyper aggro. Like so you get to play around it in multiple ways. Whereas Bucky, there's no way that you're going to play around it um, without having to like have direct removal. Like you can't just. I mean, the only other way right now is just hold out and hope you outdraw the discard and then get a board wipe.
Another one. Dalmatian puppies. Change that to 101, maybe 102, that you can have in a deck.
But there is a reason why it's 99 puppies.
Right, because
Is when you add Perdita and Pongo, that makes 101.
yeah,
But then, but
'Cause that's how it
well,
was in the movie. It was 99 puppies
and
plus the 2
to
parents.
well, in that case, they should mine it because we
Rowley and
got lucky and we got Rory. So then they should make it 97.
oh man, um, yeah, I'm trying to think of what other cards I would like to see errata. You know, I think a whole new world. Uh,
Whole new
is,
world is fine.
I think it's good. I think it has a chance to be broken, so I could see it getting an errata in the future if they want to deal with it that way. Um, I don't know how it would be broken yet, but
So I don't think a whole new world is gonna get broken. If it does get broken, it's gonna be a singer that breaks it, and I think that single would be who would need to be added.
No, I mean, so right now, if you do Whole New World with Diablo Exerted, you draw 14 cards. It's pretty good, right?
So in that situation, though, you would have to have Diablo Exerted, and then I would have to be the one that played Whole New World.
Does Diablo say only on your opponent's turn? Or
Only on your opponent's turn.
oh, okay, fine. That's how they get around it.
Yeah.
But suppose that they have something else that's like that. Basically, Whole New World is now saying anything that triggers on your opponent drawing needs to take that into consideration.
Yeah.
Right. And so they may, change it.
But
What if they just say it's like you don't draw 7 cards, you look at the top 7 cards and put up to 7 into your hand.
But here's the thing, though. When you have combo pieces, and that's also another thing too with the whole banning of Errata. You want to ban the standalone victory card that don't need you to build around, the card that when you just play them by themselves, it's a win. In this scenario with a whole new world, it's not a whole new world. It's just what's getting triggered by it. So then you want to focus on a game design standpoint. You want to focus on the card that being triggered, not so much the card that. Because in this scenario, instead of allowing Bucky, who triggered all the dick cards, you just up all the Floodborn cards. So they're like, oh, okay, Bucky's being too much a problem. We're gonna up all the Floodborns by 1.
Yeah, but that seems too broad stroke. Like it's too.
Yeah.
To me, it's too complicated to say all Floodborns that were previously printed cost 1 more. Half of them cost more, and half of them, or
Yeah.
and it's the
And
same with. I think I don't know. So I was thinking about what you were saying. So in Magic the Gathering, Wheel of Fortune was banned, and there was no single card that made Wheel of Fortune win you the game. It was the fact that you just had so many low to the ground threats or direct damage or whatever, and you just emptied your hand before your opponent did, and it limited the play space to saying everyone needs to play that kind of style of deck.
that was I was playing before Into the Ink came out. And that's like, yeah, I'll play a whole new world, and then like I have answers in my hand, and I'm just going to unload my hand so you have no board, and then you can rebuild your board. That's fine, but like I still have a few answers left for what you rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense. But like, I don't know. I feel like with the game now, I think we would need a lot more changes before a whole new world really becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Well, then let me ask you this. Let me open this can of worms. We've talked about errata cards, we talked about ban cards, and you talked about the possibility of like a whole new world of what could happen to make it dangerous. What about limiting cards to how many you're allowed to have a card in a deck?
I like that a lot more than I like the trade of banning or ladder cards. Because it still makes the card playable, it still keeps the fun combos and stuff people like, but it makes them less likely to occur, and it make it a lot more like it make the beta free format a lot more viable. Because yeah, I may be able to pull off that combo the first game with you, but I may not draw it again for the next 2 games.
Mm-hmm. I like it in theory, but it would feel really terrible if you knew that. So let's say this is the scenario: Bucky having one of, and if especially in certain matchups, um, it can be game breaking. Right? They get a turn 2. It's just very hard to come back from. I wouldn't say it's impossible. Like they still have chances to not draw just from the the way that Emerald Steel currently is. But suppose there was a card that was slightly better than Bucky, where it didn't require you to overextend, and if you got bored, for whatever it is, um, I don't like the idea of having a restriction, because what's going to happen is then with Lorcana's super forgiving mulligan or card hand, what do they call it? Hand retooling or whatever. Uh, you know, 14. You could just see the top 14 cards of your deck basically. So it opens the can of worms of people trying to stack their deck. You know, so to cheat outside of the game, or just to do really aggressive, crazy mulligan strategies to say, hey, you know what? I got 25%. I got the 25% 2 times in a row, and there's no like. It's just such a swingy kind of game. Like it's like, oh well, 75% of the time it's a fair match, and 25% of the time it's like, well, just scoop.
Well, another way I've seen game do it, like the L5 All Living Card game, they had restricted list, and if 2 cards are on the restricted list, you can't play them in the same deck, but if you can play a full set of them. So like say Bucky and Diablo are both on the restricted list. You can only choose to play one of those 2, and you can play a full set of the one you choose.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way if it's like a busted combo.
Yeah.
I know one player that would really enjoy that format because I was just talking to him the other night, and he has the hardest time of putting just a single card into his decks. If a card's limited where you could only have one of it, he would be like, I'm just not going to play that card.
Mm-hmm.
Because he has to have a full playset of every card he puts in his deck.
Yeah. I don't know.
So there are players out there that if cards are limited, they'll just be like, it's just not worth the effort to have it in my deck either. So
Yeah. I don't know. I think there are circumstances where it makes sense, but I would say if it's a card that they see as powerful enough to make 3 drastic changes to, like Bucky, I think it's better that they errated him than to just put it in a restricted list, because it's just it's just going to be the same thing. It's going to have okay, well, you reduced it so that way every game isn't oppressive, but now a quarter of the games are oppressive. I don't know.
But also though, like this just made the value of the original Bucky go up. Especially the promo one.
yeah, I was gonna say, we're seeing the price of the promos change more than we're seeing the regular cards change.
Well, the promo is already the more valuable limited one, and so now it's even going to be way more limited. And like I said, a lot of people in a casual setting would still play Cold Dead Written.
Yeah. Yeah, ultimately, right, if you're not playing in an official tournament, you can play cards however you want. You could say that Gantu only costs 5.
That to be a random rule in the new format we're working on. Like,
No,
got
see,
you got 5.
The rule is I get to play him for less. You guys still have to play him at full value.
Right. Yeah. It's, I don't know. I think, yeah. Ultimately, we can make an entire podcast episode about errata and how it's the right or wrong thing or everything else, but
We pretty much just did.
right.
Yeah.
But the end of the day is what I'm trying to say is you're playing this game. Most of the games that people play are around tabletop settings with friends and whatever else. Like, be free to be a little bit creative with the rules. Like, if you're like, hey, let's play with Bucky original, it's fine. If you don't agree with it, ask your friend that you play with. Say, hey, let's just see, what we can do if it's played as written, or we just change one of those 3 things that they did.
Oh, this is another point that I did realize that we didn't really talk about. Bandlit cards are not permanent. When the meta tips that the cards are no longer a viable threat, they can become unbanned. A lot harder when you reprint cards with the new tech.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, it's easier it's like a light switch you can turn on and off. Whereas errata is like, I don't know, remodeling.
But then again, though, like they see the direction of it. So if they feel like it's Bucky, they're gonna get more and more broken as they go on.
Yeah.
Because like they're gonna put more Floodborn, they're gonna have more cheaper Floodborn.
More
Right now,
alternative cost Floodborns.
And I'm wondering if we're going to start seeing it in like other combinations too. Like right now, like it's Emblem Steel, but like maybe like um Ruby gets a lot of cheap Floodborns, and so like a Bucky Ruby deck that have the Lady Tremaines and the
Mhm.
Titudes. Oh, you could not. Oh, like oh yeah, like the Titudes, the 8 card one. Like hey, I played this. Use all your creatures, and I'm gonna take 1 card from your hand.
Mhm. Hey, and Bucky's increased cost probably doesn't make that big of a difference in that deck either.
Also, now I'm thinking about it too. Like I think we did see in some of the record out cards some cheap tips
Yeah.
Floodborn. So
Yes.
I think maybe
Yeah,
that's
we
it.
did.
Maybe they saw Ruby Emblem becoming a huge problem.
Yeah, or maybe there's something weird with eraser mechanic or keyword or whatever character type.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Anything else you guys want to say about Errata or Band or just Bucky in general before we wrap up?
I can't say I'm sad to see Bucky leave the competitive format before or go to Toronto Challenge. I
Yeah,
think
I would.
it's going to be
I
fun.
like honestly, I when I piloted the Bucky gag, I didn't super enjoy it as much as I enjoyed some of the other gags Green Tail gags I was playing. So like I was already planning on trying to move away from it and been experimenting with other gags. So I'm not super sad. I don't like how they went about it.
Hmm.
I but like I'm glad to see them paying attention. They're keeping an eye on King. They're listening to people, and they're like, okay, this is the problem. I do agree that like I like that they saw that there was a problem and they dealt with it. I don't like how they dealt with it, but I like they dealt with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think, like I said, it's um, you know, the problem solver in me is like, oh, just let us figure it out a little bit more. Let us try some more creative things. But ultimately, as a developer and a creator of a game, if you realize your player base can't figure it out, it's time to change. Like
Yeah.
even if you know that, oh yeah, we've play tested and there's totally a way around Bucky. Um, if the if the community is to the point where it's kind of it feels toxic, then you need to address it. So I'm
Well, and
glad.
all
Go ahead.
sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but it also like with them playtesting, you cannot like when you have like 100 people playtesting, that not going to fully come up with all the ideas when you put in the hands of like a million players.
Hmm.
Like the players are going to figure out combos and stuff that the playtesters may not have had time to come up with.
Yeah, I think as the game grows, they should be able to better detect these things. I mean, Bucky discard doesn't seem like that. I mean, now that it's out and people have played it, it doesn't seem that novel of an idea. So, it, but it obviously didn't matter for the past two sets, right?
Yeah,
Until
like
until Diablo and kind of alternate shift, the alternate shift uh, Diablo comes.
Diablo and
The
Pegasus and Aladdin.
Yeah, those are just
Oh,
like good low cost shift cards that
yeah.
you could just play as is and they're still good. I mean, especially the Aladdin is just like a play as is a 3/3 for 3 that has a destroy items. It's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, that those calls are what put Bucky over the edge because I thought Bucky get rat at winning tour championships and people talking about them online, but
But
yeah,
those ones
that
leaned more on Prince John too, though, right?
they had Prince John, but they did not lean heavily on him.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm surprised that the first card is Bucky to get errated or banned or restricted.
I I'm sad that it was, but I'm not surprised because there's a some screenshot that constantly I see it passing around, where someone posted a like, mark my word, Bucky gonna be the first called banned.
Yeah, I
So
saw that on
I'm,
Facebook too.
you know what? Maybe that's why they didn't ban him. Maybe they're like, we don't want to put that person right.
Yeah.
Well, for me, going off of Disney lore, my new headcanon is the reason it was Bucky is the Squirrel Squeak Tutor, and it was just lost in translation what he was saying, and so this is finally the correct translation.
I like it. I like it.
So, okay, well, that's all the time we have for this chapter of Adventures in the Ink. Don't forget to comment on the videos. Let us know what you like, what your thoughts are on Bucky and Errata in TCGs. And join us next time for Adventures in the Ink. And as always, Illumineers, adventure awaits.